So, okay, well, really, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Phrasal verbs are tricky, and I think the only reason that phrasal verbs can be a little more tricky than other different types of chunk, and that's all they are. I mean, all language is chunk to a certain extent. We have different names for different things. You know, we talk about idioms, and in applied linguistics, at least, we talk about lexical bundles, which really are kind of the most chunk-like chunk, I guess. You know, we also talk about collocations, and we talk about phrasal verbs, and they're all really just different names for what is essentially the same thing. The thing that can make phrasal verbs tricky is that you do get this thing where really they can either be stuck together, or they can have like other chunks like embedded into the middle of them. And, you know, whenever I have to come up with an example of something, my head just goes totally blank. For example, fall over can also be fall right over. And there are better examples as well. But really, just my advice is just look at them as just a type of chunk and try not to worry too much about the distinctions between things. Because as soon as you start doing that, we really then start going back to really the old ways of thinking about things, and we start to overthink things, and we start to really pay too much attention to it. And I mean, phrasal verbs, like many things, it's one of those things that a lot of people say, oh my God, they're so difficult, they're so hard. But the reality is just like idioms, the vast majority of phrasal verbs actually really aren't that frequent. You know, we have many, which are like ultra frequent, come up, for example, or I believe the most common in British English is come on. You know, as long as you learn those and you also understand that they have multiple meanings, just like many types of chunks, I think really that's going to give you 80–90% of the benefit without having to worry too much about these really, really rare ones, which again, really are, one, not that common. Two, they tend to have single meanings anyway. And three, if you think of them as just chunks, then they're much easier anyway. A good example would be something like whip up. And it doesn't really make that much sense until you actually think of it as the larger kind of block of English. Whip up breakfast, meaning to quickly make breakfast. So that's really just the main advice I've got for phrasal verbs, is try not to think of them too much as phrasal verbs. Don't worry about the distinction between things. Just really focus on what we talked about in week 4, week 5, learning from real data so that you're always actually learning samples of natural English that people actually use, and then using the tools like I introduced you to really understand the frequency of them, how often that they're used, because that's useful information. Also, you know, the deeper meaning, how they're actually used. If they've got multiple meanings, it's worth looking at that as well. But really just don't worry about them too much is the main advice I've got there. Does that help? It's really the same advice for other things like prepositions as well. If we start to think of prepositions as simply a part of a chunk, suddenly life becomes much easier. It's only because we've all spent so long looking at prepositions in the dictionary and trying to somehow comprehend these abstract meanings and rules that they have that we struggle with them so much. And as soon as we just let go of that and just think, well, okay, they're just chunks, learn them like that, life gets much easier. Cool. That was a good question, Chima. Thank you.